I want to play even my Drytrons.
We have Eva at home.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on, guys? LoganJYA Drytron here, and as promised, I've got a nice video for you that I think you guys are really going to dig, and if you're a Drytron duelist in October of 2022, you're really going to be able to leverage what I got to tell you right now, and that's going to be kind of a comprehensive breakdown of all of the best builds of Drytron that you could actually play going into this new format, and I'm including templates of all of these profiles here in the video. We're going to talk about each and every one of them, and there'll be links in the description down below if you guys want to try them out for yourself or custom tailor them to your personal play styles. So there's a lot to be had here, but you're definitely going to want to stick around for the entire video because I'm rating each deck individually on a scale of 1 to 5, letting you know what my opinion the best deck could be going into the new format. Alright guys, but without further ado, I don't want to preface this too much. Let's get into things with deck list number 1. Alright my friends, deck list number 1 might look a little bit familiar if you guys saw our Drytron 20.0 deck profile. That was a week prior to the Banlist dropping, and we talked a lot about in that video the power of the Amorphactor FTK, especially when combined with the Vendread engine, our boy Battlelord that you can see featured in here, taking very strong advantage of this gentleman and the fact that he's locking the opponent out of hand traps, basically an Azathoth after you summon it for either monsters, spells, or traps. So you kind of choose what you want to lock them out of hand trapping you with, pretty much, when you're doing your combo. But this is an FTK 100%. We're trying to turn skip the opponent with Amorphactor, and this, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to do it. Now, are there other ways to do the FTK? And there's one other one we're going to talk about in just a minute here, but I want to let you guys know that this one is probably my favorite FTK strategy, and there's a few reasons for that, because it really is one of the most consistent FTKs that you can do with Drytron. Now, mind you, is it an actual FTK where your opponent doesn't get a turn? No, they get a draw phase, a standby phase, and an end phase. So in theory, you know, it's not really an FTK, but it is one of the most consistent ones you can pull off in Drytron, and there's multiple 2-card routes that actually get you to it. You guys already know Nova plus a name, and actually, with this particular build, there is an Alpha Zeta line, shout out to my boy John Kurt, that does get you the FTK as well. It's just not as safe through Nibiru. It's technically Nibiruable, but you are un-Nibiruable in your Nova plus name full combo, and we have a video on that combo as well, so you definitely want to check out 20.0 if you want to see how to do that 100% Nibiru safe. Another bright side to this build is the fact that it can just steal games. No interruption plus a playable hand equals you win. It's that simple. So if you win that die roll and your opponent either has, you know, 1 interruption that doesn't stop you or no interruptions at all, you literally just win game 1. And theory should go on to win the match because you can do the same thing in game 3. So there's a lot of strong stuff going on here when it comes down to the fact that an FTK strategy, especially going into a format where there's not a lot of hand traps and people are choosing to play blowouts instead, you're in a really good situation. Now, mind you, the meta is still a little undefined, but it looks like it might be leaning in the opposite direction. That means hand trap heavy. So that means something like this might not be as good, and that goes into one of our first cons here, which is not the best going into early hand traps or a hand trap heavy format. So if your opponent is ashing on alpha and you don't have a way to really play through that, or, you know, they're locking you out of your Battlelord after you summon it, that means they may have a second hand trap to follow it up with, like Veil or Imperm plus Nibiru, puts you in a kind of a tricky situation. So the early hand traps, it's not super great, but it is a resilient combo, and it is very safe through the blowouts. Obviously, your opponent cannot blow you out if they don't have a turn. And another thing that this deck on the downside loses to is what I call a long-held Imperm. That's right, folks. If your opponent holds that infinite impermanence, say you call monsters with your Battlelord, which of course is the correct thing to call, and you're holding it, and their opponent is holding that Imperm until the end of the play, you summon the Amorphactor or the Griffin, and they hit you with that Imperm, and you're like, ah, shoot. Well, darn. Okay, we're going to rely on that floodgate effect of it. So there is still a little bit of a backup that kind of goes into it, but you're not turn skipping them anymore, right? So it does lose to that long held Imperm. But I still think this is an insanely good, insanely powerful list going into the new format, and I gotta say, it depends how things shake out. If we shift back away from the hand traps, this is looking like a really, really good choice. So overall rating, I'm giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. You know, that's a really high rating, but that shows you how much respect I kind of put into this particular deck list. But don't worry, guys, we're going to get into some uncharted territory here with the list you guys may not have seen on my channel before, but there's some other people who have been talking about this. Let's get into list number 2. Alright guys, list number 2 here. Listen, I really have not played this particular build too much, but I think it would be disrespectful to this particular strategy to not at least show it and shout it out in this particular list. And a few people have shown this build on their channels before. I want to give a specific shout out to Clean Kaiba and the gents. Shout out to you, my friend. I did see this on your channel. You had a very good breakdown on it, and that is the Arcana Force, the World FTK. This is indeed another turn skip. Think about it. The way that Drytron FTKs people is by turn skipping, and there's 2 different ways to do it, but this one legitimately says, it just says that your opponent does not get another turn. You send 2 monsters to the grave, skip your opponent's entire next turn. That's what the World does here, in case you're new to that. And this brings together a lot of fan-favorite strategies here. So we've got the Arcana Force, of course, and we're taking advantage of things like Beatrice to set up a play with the Rainbow Bridge, which searches out the Light Barrier. Arcana Force is a fairy, which means we're searching it off Ben 10. Absolute insanity. And we're using the Megaliths to climb us into the Beatrice without using the normal summon, meaning that we can spend that normal summon on the Arcana Force of the World and skip the opponent's turn. But if you are unable to do so, then you still have the power of the Megalith Drytrons, which is one of your most high-ceiling Drytron builds that you're able to play. So there's a lot you can do here, and I think it's absolutely insane. If you guys want to see my tutorial on how to do the Arcana Force, the World FTK, let me know in the comments down below. But there are some big cons to this one too, guys. And that big con, in my opinion, the biggest one, is that this one is playing by far the most bricks that you can, and it's probably the least consistent route, especially for squeezing the Megaliths in there too. We've got all of these bricks in there, and theoretically, since we're playing so many ritual cards, those are kind of bricks as well. So while you can, 2.5 card or 2 card combo into this FTK, it's interruptible and it's also bricky. So that is my big downside to this particular build. I do think if it was between this and the Amorphactor, I'd definitely be going towards the Amorphactor build. You've got more easy and consistent backup plans already incorporated into that strategy. If you get stopped, you still have the pseudo floodgate effects of that Amorphactor backing things up. Same thing goes with the Nightmare Griffin. In this build, the World doesn't really come with that, so you're really hoping it goes through. But if it does, you're just winning the game. So of course that is a big bright side. Overall rating, I got to give this one a 3.5 out of 10. It is the lesser of the 2 FTK strategies, but it does leverage some cool, fun cards, some cheeky techs of the fact of the Rainbow Bridge. When you're starting your Light Barrier, you also get a free fairy in the form of the Ruby Carbuncle, which you can use to line up with your Orange Light. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do here, and you can make it pretty safe in the later half of the combo, but in the early half, not as much. You're still a little subjective, and you got to hope that your deck is on your side and isn't going to brick you. But that's what I'm talking about in this particular build. Let's move on to another standard choice to kind of dive into things and give that a rating. Alright guys, and this next list is going to be another familiar one because 21.0 is what we are looking at here, folks. That's right, it's VaniKey, Vanity's Ruler plus the Magic Key engine, which is one of the most oppressive end boards you can put up with Drytron. It is right here in front of you guys. You saw we just profiled it in 21.0. We are leveraging the power of things like Vanity's Ruler in combination with the Magic Key unlocking, which makes us basically immune to things like Dark Ruler No More and Droplets. So it's a really, really, really strong, hard to crack strategy when it goes off, and even though it can be stopped with hand traps, you have easy routes into backup plans and you can play it safe. So if you get cut off from doing the full combo of Magic Key plus Vanity's Ruler, it is still very easy to end on the Vanity's Ruler, or with a one-name hand, end on the Beto Buster lock with additional interruptions on top of that. I go super in-depth into this one on the 21.0 deck profile, so you might want to check it out there. This one is kind of a teched out build. We're looking at 46 cards, which is a high main deck count, but we are incorporating things like high impact hand traps that you can draw as a 6 card that actually do work here, as well as, the one of spell and trap removal. You can make this Harpy's Feather Duster. Cosmic doesn't really make a difference. There's a lot of bright sides to this build, guys. When it resolves, the board is almost unbeatable by the meta. It doesn't lose to things like super polymerization because you can't legally activate it under Ruler. It doesn't lose to Dark Ruler or Droplets when you have it backed up with the Magic Key unlocking. And also, like I said earlier, can easily pivot and play safe around things like Nibiru by tribute summoning your Vanity's Ruler early or lining up a Herald of Orange Light with a hard-drawn fairy in hand. And with triple Ben 10, that's more often going to happen than it used to without triple Ben 10, you know what I mean? And we have so many routes into it. We play consistency cards in builds like this, like Pot of Prosperity, leading this to be one of the most consistent builds you can play, and you really take advantage of the fact that you're just leveraging for that specific end board. You really just want to strive to get there, and if you get cut off from it, that's okay, but you can still line up really strong backup plans with it. Another thing you can consider adding, because another bright side of this deck is you have more liberty with the extra deck. You're not committed to a very high ceiling combo. Your combo doesn't require much utility out of the extra deck, which means you can actually swap those slots into utility slots that you can use whether you're forced to go second, play a higher Nightmare package like Phoenix and Unicorn, keeping the IP as a backup plan, make advantage of Underworld Goddess to suck up opponents' monsters, things like that. You could also fit in a rank 1 like the Lyrilucht Recital Starling to search things like the DD Crow out of the main deck as an additional backup plan. There's so many routes you can take, and you have the creative liberty to do so with a build like this. This is one of the more fun templates you can do, and if you want to make it really committed to just going first, you could trim the fat down, get this list down to 40 cards like that just by cutting things like the hand traps or cutting out some of the other consistency cards. You could easily get this down to 40 cards if that is your particular play style. It is really easy, 2-card combo routes. You can play with 1-name hands, and you have a lot of utility here, so I really do think this is a strong contender. Now, let's get into the downsides here. If you want the full board, this is very common knowledge. It is a 3-card combo, and obviously that is far from ideal. I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you that a 3-card combo is the route that we like to take, but you already know Alpha, Zeta, plus Prep or Ben 10 or Diviner or something like that will get you to the full board with the Beto Buster plus the Vanity's Ruler. I lied when I said Diviner. That doesn't help you. But a hard-drawn Ben 10 or a Preparation or Rites does help get you there. But that is a higher requirement to get to that full board. It also, you have to have the ability to kind of read your opponent when you're going through these plays, because hand traps at awkward times can make it more difficult, and you have to know when you want to play it safe and go for that early normal summon of the Vanity's Ruler to play around something like Nibiru in exchange or trade-off for additional card advantage, like things like a Searched Orange Light going into the opponent's turn, or, you know, the full board combo with a Beto Buster setup. You have to really kind of read your opponent to see what you have to play around and how to play out your turn the best with a build like this. So that is a bit of a downside there, because that's how you have to do it in order to play optimally. And then the last thing I want to talk about is how Vanity's Ruler in this build in general can lose pretty hard to stun, and it can also lose to Dark Ruler and Droplets when you're not able to go for the full board. Now, when I say stun, I'm talking really specifically about decks like Floowandereeze, because you really don't have, like, you know, you're going first game 1 strategy. If you're sticking to the game plan, you're really only ending on Spell and Trap negates, and a Vanity's Ruler that's not going to do anything against them, so it can be pretty easy for them to kind of steamroll over there, and that means you got to pivot quickly in games 2 and 3. So if you get to go first in game 1 and put up the full board, but unfortunately, like, you know, it's not effective, you may get smacked up on the clapback and be put into a more difficult situation going to games 2 and 3. So those are things just to stay aware of. But overall, still an insanely strong pick going into the new format. I have to put this one at a solid 4 out of 5. It is one of the better picks going into an uncharted territory. I think it's a safe bet. Give it a shot. You want a more in-depth explanation, check out 21.0 deck profile. But without further ado, let's get into one that I'm really excited about, our next list. Alright guys, what we have on the screen right now may be one of my favorite lists that we're going to show in this video, and it's one that I'm really excited to test, both on DB, on stream, and in person. You guys are getting a look at it here first. Now, this is something that a few other people have decided to highlight. Got to give a shout out to my friend Sorvent. Check out his channel. A friend of the Drytron 100%, as well as my boy Alpha Thubin, who played this in our free tournament series, the GG for free. You want to participate in something like that, join the Discord, link in the description down below. Enough shameless plugs though, look at what you're seeing right now is the closest you're going to get to the classic Drytron experience back when EVA was legal. And that's because we're leveraging these little replacement cards right here in the form of the Super Quantum White Layer and the Super Quantum Fairy Alphin. So if you guys don't know what this does, I'm just going to explain the purpose of the engine real quickly. And when I do the full in-depth deck profile on this list, we'll go into it a bit more detail on how to take advantage of them through combo routes. But the White Layer serves as an EVA replacement because it's when it's sent to the graveyard, whether to trigger something like your Perfection to negate something, or you send it off Beatrice to get a free search, it searches out the Alphin right here, which is another fairy that you can use for additional negates. It's really cool. Is it as good as EVA? Absolutely not, but it is still the closest thing we have access to as a free replacement, and it is really, really, really cool and such a creative idea, so it's something really, really awesome. Now, that's what I mean when I say that this plays like classic Drytron. You are trying to turbo out your Perfection and get as many fairies in hand for negates as possible, and we get to do that through a lot of cool things, like taking advantage of the triple Ben 10, super easy 2-card combo routes that get you there, and also the ability to play with 1-name hands plus Ben 10 and end on like Perfection with minimum 3 negates. It is still so easy to do. So these are some of the bright sides. Is the consistency. You're almost always going to see a route to Ben 10. You have so many fairies that you can play with to play it safe, and another thing I really, really want to mention here is the fact that we get to leverage a card like Pre-Preparation of Rites. You know what this card serves a purpose as, in my opinion? This is like 3 extra copies of Call by the Grave right up here. And you know why I say that? I say that because this is a must-negate card. If your opponent has the Ash and you go for Pre-Prep, they have to use it there. Otherwise, you're going to get too much advantage. And they run the risk of not being able to activate that Ash at a later time because you're going to establish a Perfection. Now, at the same time, if this resolves and you're able to summon the Perfection with a Ben 10, you're automatically locking up negates to play through any other hand traps your opponent might have. That DD Crow immediately just became useless. That Imperm became useless, and you can spend the time during your turn going through your combo, stockpiling more and more of those negates, just like how Drytron used to do when it came out, and when we got our first round of support with things like Diviner and Moy Beta. You really, really get to leverage those things and play it like it was meant to be played back in the day. That's why I think I love this build so much. It brings back so much nostalgia. And why do I think this is good going into this new format? I think it's really, really good going into the new format, especially if it's going to be hand trap heavy. Leveraging something like Pre-Preparation of Rites lets us run through those hand traps. And I have to say that I actually was able to test this build against Triff when he was playing Bested Tier Element. And for those of you who know what the Bested cards do, they're basically all DD Crows. Having the Pre-Preparation of Rites and an early Perfection is the key to playing through those cards. So post Darkwing Blast, a build like this really might be your absolute best bet. And going into this unknown, Wild West type format, this may be another really strong choice to play. Now, another cool thing I want to point out here is the fact that we also have backup plans in here. It may seem like very one-track mind strategy here, but we still have things like Draconids as a backup plan. We also have, if we look in the side deck, Artifact Scythe as a backup plan in games 2 and 3, because we can leverage the Sprite Elf combo and Artifact Dagda to do the same play where you use the Diviner to bring itself back, pop the Scythe with an Entist that you send off Diviner, and do that on your opponent's turn as well. It can bring that ceiling even higher, which is absolutely insane. The only problem I'll say about that is that it does still lose to Dark Ruler and Droplets, and I think now is an okay time to kind of talk about some of the cons here. It's obviously a lower ceiling and can lose to certain blowouts. A Kaiju on the Perfection hurts immensely. While we can run through hand traps a lot easier, things like Droplets and Dark Ruler were far less resilient against. Now, mind you, when we stockpile those orange lights in hand, we're still giving ourselves a backup plan, and if we get Dark Rulered, it's not that big of a deal because we're guaranteed to live, and we have so much card advantage and follow-up that we are absolutely going to obliterate whatever they can put up on the crackback with things like Natasha. So that is still really, really good. Now, unfortunately, our Scythe play with the Elf is something else that'll still lose to Dark Ruler, and it's, less than ideal because a lot of people are going to be playing that card. However, into the hand traps, we got a pretty good setup going. And another downside I want to point out here, for those with perceptive eyes will see, we're playing a very small name lineup to keep this list at 40 cards, so we really can take advantage of things like Pre-Prep, Prep, and Ben 10. We want to see those as much as possible, so we had to cut back on some of the other good things, and that is a bit of an unfortunate part, that we're only playing 1 Gamma and 1 Delta in a list like this, so it's hard to make room for things like that when you're trying to keep it as consistent as possible. So, a Deity Crow on a Delta or a Gamma can hurt big time. time if we don't have a way to stop it. And small name room does make it a little bit more fragile or susceptible to one-name hands. Now, mind you, you can still play out one-name hands and get to the full board, but just have to flag those things. Anyway, overall rating, I want to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Again, going into a hand trap heavy format, I think this could be one of the absolute best ways to play it. And if you're new to Drytron and really want to get the classic experience going into October 2022, you want to make it feel like you're back in 2020. If you didn't have the chance to play the deck then with EVA legal, this is probably going to be the closest you can do, because I don't think EVA's unfortunately ever coming back off the ban list. Unfortunate facts, guys. But anyway, guys, let's get into our next list. And without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, guys, next thing we're talking about here is going second Drytron. And you guys might remember when we talked about this with my boy Sam, who ended up topping regionals with this particular strategy. And I gotta tell you, it is scary. So it's something really interesting, but it flips the Drytron style that you might be used to if you're a frequenter of this channel on its head, right? So, you know, we go second when we have to, and we take huge advantage of the fact that Drytron can rip through boards like wet toilet paper, but at the same time, choosing to go second runs against the grain of my personal play style of the deck. So, you know, things to take note of, but what this deck does good is leveraging things like the powerful blowouts, the most powerful blowouts in the game. Mystic Mind, Forbidden Droplets, Dark Ruler No More, Ultimate Slayer. There is no deck greater that can take advantage of these cards than Drytron, and it really, really, really can help you rip through any established board just by seeing one of these in some engine. That's the really, really cool thing. You can do it with such small inputs and still have an insanely high output. Mystic Mind is still a diabolical card. Now, I know I hate to talk about it because we all kind of wish it was banned recently, but Drytron can leverage it really, really well. If you need to buy yourself some time, throw up the mine, and then when the time arises, slide into a Lyrilusk Assembled Nightingale Zeus play, knock out your opponent's entire board, and then tribute summon for Vanity's Ruler and flip them the double bird. You know what I mean? It's so easy to do things like that in a deck like Drytron, and that's why it takes really, really good advantage of that. Also, playing something like the blowouts means you have also infinite recovery into most meta decks because you're spending all those other slots on your main engine pieces. You also have a very secure backup plan in the form of the Vanity's Ruler. In case the opponent makes you go first, you're like, okay, I'm gonna Vanities lock you. Or if you look in the side deck of this particular build that I'm showing on here, what I decided to do with this build was side deck into the FTK. If I think my opponent's gonna make me go first, I'm just gonna FTK them. So, you know, you got a lot of cool options and things you can do to really mind game your opponent, but that also leads me into some of the downsides of this build, okay? Is that you have to have an obscene talent at reading your opponent and going second to see when they're gonna flip off those interruptions or spend them on specific cards, and an innate knowledge thinking 3 to 4 to 5 steps ahead of your opponent to be able to kick their butt fighting through their board. You're letting them go first. You're letting them put up the board. You're basically saying, I'm gonna have it. You know the better have it phrase? You're saying, oh, I don't care what you do. I'm gonna have it. So, you know, kind of risky. And at the same time, this build in particular loses big time to the blowouts like Eradicator. You know what I mean? Eradicator rips through this build because all of your blowouts that enable you to play through things like the Dwellers or the Collider Hearts or those other types of shenanigans, you lose to that Eradicator. You know, it makes it a real tricky mission. So you have to hope to draw engine cards at that point, otherwise you're losing insane amount of card advantage to that insanely diabolical card. Now, another thing is Abyss Dweller can make it kind of tricky if you don't see the Forbidden Droplets and you're trying to fight through a board that established an Abyss Dweller. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle, and it's going to be hard to establish the things you want to put yourself into a secure space where you're winning that match. But there's still a lot of bright side, of course. You got the extra deck. It is like an absolute toolbox when you're going second. You leverage all the Nightmares, all of the Zeus routes, all of that good stuff. You make maximized advantage of the Ultimate Slayer with the Evil Twin package. You know, there's still a lot of good going for it, but in my opinion, it runs too far much against the grain. I think it's a little tricky that, you know, giving yourself no opportunity to have interaction on the opponent's turn when you let them go first, exclusively relying on blowouts, and if you don't see them, it's risky business. So for me personally, this isn't my favorite choice, but I think in the hands of the right Drytron player, it's got insane potential. My personal rating, a 3.5 out of 5, you know. Still really, really good, just not for me. Let's move on to the next list. Now, you guys have been requesting a lot in the comments to see more Megalith Drytron, and I see why, because it's one of the most high-ceiling builds of Drytron that you could ever possibly play. The combos go on forever. The end boards are obscene. The card advantage that you hold is so intoxicating, and it makes it near impossible for your opponent to win after you put up a Megalith Drytron board. The other good thing about Megalith Drytron, it can play long and it can play hard. It can play through interruption, and it is hard for your opponent to know when to particularly hand trap certain plays. Also, you play very safe into Nibiru because you set up the Barone. If they don't hit you with the Nibiru, then you summon Barone. If they do hit you with the Nibiru, you still have a super duper easy backup plan into Scythe plus Fool very, very easily just by saving that Gamma. It is insane what this list can do and the boards it can put up. Another bright side, we can leverage things like the Abyss Dweller in builds like this. Now, that's something I haven't shown on this channel yet with Megalith Drytron. I don't think I showed the full combo board. We're also ending on the Dweller, but guys, I'm telling you, it's absolutely insane, diabolical. You can play into things like Dark Ruler No More with no fear, because in the standby phase, you have multiple ways to Dweller them, Scythe lock them. You have so many ways to adapt your plays, to play around different things. It is strong. You take advantage of all of the best parts of your deck, and you can take it and push it to that ceiling that is higher than anything that we've seen so far in this video, like Perfection or Vanity's Ruler, because you just hold obscene amounts of card advantage. Now, mind you, are your interruptions as, you know, diabolical as something like Vanity's Ruler or Perfection? Not necessarily. You're not getting as much value out of one card, but you're ending on so many different things like Sprite Elf to bring back Diviner, ending on things like Barone, which is an Omni Negate. Like, it's really, really good. And again, you're dodging Dark Ruler No More. A lot of what you're doing is happening in the standby phase. You can Scythe in the standby. You Dweller in the standby if you're summoning it. It's insane. It works out so well that way. And if the opponent does have a Droplets, well, you also have the option for a backup Orange Light in hand. And on top of that, there is so much they're going to have to Droplet. Minimum 4 cards if you put up the full board. Elf, Fool, Barone, and what's the fourth one? Dweller. Sorry, Elf, Fool, Barone, and Dweller. That's 4 cards they have to Scythe, which means they have to Droplets, which means they're only playing on 2 cards, which means if you secure it an Orange Light in hand, they're probably not going to be able to win with 2 cards. Like, it's absolutely insane. If they forget to Droplets one of them, you still have interactions on their turn. It's absolutely, absolutely strong. But let's get into some of the downsides here. The biggest one being, it is far less consistent. You are playing so many rituals and, objectively speaking, a bit more bricks than you are in some of the other builds we showed off so far, which can lead you to have those unplayable hands, and it can be unfortunate. Now, mind you, with the Megaliths, you can play with 1-name hands pretty easily and get to those high-ceiling boards. Not as high-ceiling with a 2-name hand, but you can still put it up. It's just you are definitely in a less consistent situation. And also, with these high-ceiling combos, you have less room for flex spots, both in the main deck and the extra deck. They're both extremely tight, so you don't get to take advantage of things like Mirage Light, or take advantage of an expanded Nightmare package, or IP Masquerena. These are things, you know, the sacrifices you have to make to play a build like Megalith Drytron. And of course, you know, you don't get as much room in the main for hard-going second cards. Really, like in this particular build, we've only got the Droplets. Kind of have to hope to see it, or hope that our engine can push through things. Now, mind you, our engine can push through a lot. Bethor is an insane card. Summoning this and blowing up, you know, 3 to 4 to 5 cards is absolutely amazing, and we can do that very easily. And of course, we have Natasha to crack through boards, so going second isn't the end of the world, but, you know, you don't have the opportunity to play as many of those flex spot cards. That's what I say about that. Now, giving this one an overall rating, you know, it can go second. When it goes first and it goes off, it's insane. Only big drawback is the consistency factor. I got to put this one at a 4 out of 5. You know, it can eat through hand traps. It is really, really delicious. It is yummy to play. If you guys want to see another Megalith Drytron profile, like fully in depth, let me know in the comments, guys. I do love this list. I have an affinity for it. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the last list we're going to talk about in this video. Let's get to it. All right, my friends, last list I want to show in this particular video is another one of my favorites, and this one I really can only just call Drytron combo, like full Scythe combo. You're committing to the Scythe lock play on top of that with a Dweller to kind of really go in on an unbeatable first turn board that really dodges a lot, right? It dodges Dark Ruler, it dodges Droplets too. Like, if their opponent is to Droplets you, they have to pick one thing or the other. So if your opponent's a Tier Element player, they're going to be cooked because they're either under Scythe or they're under Dweller, and both of them absolutely obliterate their deck. I already did a profile of this. You can find it in the 101 playlist, but this is kind of like more up-to-date take with triple Ben 10, and of course, you know, some of the great things about this deck is that you have maximized names, maximized consistency, high engine pieces, and it really leads to an oppressive end board that sets up Dweller, Crystal Wing, and Sprite Elf. It is really, really hard for the opponent to beat the full board. Your opponent will inevitably be locked under something because, like I said, we're dodging Dark Ruler and Droplets, and it can also go second very, very well by just leveraging the engine that we have access to. If we get Scythe, we don't care. We Draconins them. That's true for any of these builds. We Natasha them. We can use things like Triple Tactics, Talents, and Droplets to break boards. We're using some of the strongest cards that have dual functionality of going first and going second in a list like this because we're going for that maximized versatility. And it's absolutely insane. Of course, the fact that it leverages Dweller means it's a big win against Tier Element and any other graveyard-reliant deck. And of course, it is Scythe Combo. It can be very, very safe at certain points because you're establishing the Crystal Wing to play around things like Nibiru, and if the board gets broken with a Nib before the Crystal Wing is established, you have a very easy backup plan into a main phase Scythe lock with the Sprite Elf, bringing back Diviner to pop the Scythe with Entis. It does have that backup plan. Now, to go into some of the cons, in reality, this deck can be fragile. You will not get to the end board if your Ultimaya play is stopped. You can't have the Dweller with the Entis underneath it if your Diviner gets Veiled or Impermed. It's unfortunately the way it is, because you won't be able to get in the Ultimaya, you won't be able to use the Ultimaya to hard summon the Entis, and it puts you in a bit of a sticky situation, so it's harder to get to the Dweller. In fact, it's impossible to get to the Dweller in that situation. Your only real play at that point is going to be the Scythe lock with the Sprite Elf, and anything else you can back it up with, like a Draconids with a Spell Trap Negate if Moibeta's on field. It's the best thing you can really do. Now, another downside is the extra deck is extremely tight. This combo requires a lot of dedication to specific cards. So as you can see with this extra deck, you've got very little room to play around with. Our Link lineup is tiny, and that is something that I'm not a huge fan of. It doesn't give us much options for versatility and utility going into opponents' boards. And the biggest downside that I want to talk about is that the standard end board for this build is broken by one Raigeki, because you do not end on any Omni Negates or a way to get to Omni Negates. Yeah, you can theoretically end on Spell and Trap removal, but if you're Spell and Trap Negates in the form of like a Moibeta if Draconids is on field, but that's not your main combo line, and I'm just wanted to point out the fact that, yes, your board will be wiped away with a Raigeki, theoretically. Will they still be under Scythe and Dweller? Yes, they will. But if they can still kill you and they don't care about that, then it's a little tricky. Just hope you don't get Numeron FTK. Rating for this build, absolutely solid 4 out of 5. You know, it's not my absolute favorite, but it is really, really strong. High ceiling, guys. You know, when it goes off, your opponent shouldn't be winning, especially a Tier Element player. I think this is safe to call an anti-Tier Element build of Drytron. Anyway, guys, to wrap things up, this is our last list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a really fun one to put together, kind of going through a tour, you know. It's like going through the candy shop right now, looking at all the beautiful things, all the beautiful Drytron builds that you can play. And again, if you want to try out some of these templates, I'll have links in the description down below. And if you want to see an in-depth deck profile on one of these or some combo tutorials, you got to let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys so much for all the love you've been given on the Drytron videos, and just know that the Drykage appreciates you guys. But anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. LoganJYA signing off. Have a great day, and I will see you chumps later. Peace.